This was before, I don't think they were even nominated yet. They found out the next day that they were nominated.
Okay.
So it went right before. And
At 60, Diane Lane finally drops the mask Hollywood spent decades placing on her. No more careful smiles, no more rehearsed elegance, just a woman ready to confess the one thing she never dared say out loud. In a dimly lit interview room, she leans back with that slow, dangerous smile, the kind that hints at secrets she's kept far too long. "I'm old enough now to be honest," she whispers, her voice low and steady. And then she admits it. Throughout her entire career, 6 men, 6 impossibly magnetic, dangerously charming co-stars, made her forget she was acting. They made her heart race, her lines vanish, her judgment blur. She never crossed the line, but she thought about it more than once. And the very first name on her list? Someone no one expected. Number 1, Tom Cruise, the explosive energy she never saw coming. Tom Cruise wasn't just a co-star to Diane Lane, he was a lightning bolt. The moment he walked onto the set of The Outsiders, he radiated a kind of raw, combustible energy that made even the veterans pay attention. Diane remembers him as the young man who moved like he was always half a second ahead of the world, overflowing with ambition and electricity. He wasn't the Hollywood giant he would later become. But he already carried the blueprint of a superstar written across his face. For Diane, Tom's magnetism didn't come from looks alone, although the boyish grin certainly didn't hurt. It was the intensity behind his eyes. When Tom listened, he really listened. He locked in, unwavering, like he was absorbing not just Diane's words but her very breath. In scenes where they rehearsed together, Diane often found herself losing her place for a split second, thrown off balance by the sheer force of his focus. She once joked that standing near Tom Cruise felt like standing next to a live wire. You didn't dare touch, but you couldn't look away either. Their youth amplified everything: the insecurities, the dreams, the heat of the spotlight. They were all brewing beneath the surface. Tom had this relentless drive, the kind that made you want to try harder just to keep up. Diane admitted that his enthusiasm was contagious. You'd see him sprinting, planning, bouncing with adrenaline at the end of a grueling shoot, still talking about how to make the next scene even better. That kind of fire is rare. But what Diane remembers most is the moment Tom looked at her during a quiet rehearsal, holding her gaze for just a fraction longer than necessary. It wasn't flirtation. It wasn't even intention. It was presence, the kind that makes another human being feel briefly, dangerously important. And Diane, even at her most professional, wasn't immune to that spark. She never crossed a line. But in her own words, "Tom made me understand how powerful chemistry can be, even when you do nothing about it." Number 2, Matt Dillon, the slow burn smolder that stole her breath. If Tom Cruise was a lightning bolt, then Matt Dillon was a slow-burning candle, dangerous in a quieter, more hypnotic way. Diane Lane and Matt Dillon were young when they worked together, both still learning their place in Hollywood, both trying to look older and more confident than they truly felt. Matt carried himself with an effortless coolness that directors loved, and Diane couldn't deny. He didn't have to say much, and he didn't. His silence was its own kind of dialogue. Diane recalls the way he'd lean against a wall, arms crossed loosely, eyes half-lidded but observant. He embodied the 1980s heartthrob archetype without even trying. One subtle grin from him, a half-smile sliding in from the corner of his mouth, was enough to make Diane lose her composure. She admitted she forgot her lines more than once, not because Matt was doing anything flirtatious, but because something in his stillness pulled her in. There was an innocence to it all, mixed with a quiet intensity. They were kids pretending to be adults, navigating roles that demanded vulnerability they didn't yet know how to fake. Matt's gaze had weight, the kind that lingered a bit longer than normal, just enough to make Diane's pulse jump. She remembers thinking, "If I look away first, I lose." But she almost always looked away first, even decades later. The memory of Matt Dillon brings a softness to Diane's tone, a nostalgia that hints at what could have been, but never was. He represented a kind of youthful excitement she could never recreate. Diane once said, "Matt Dillon will always be the person who reminds me of who I was before the world decided who I should be." It's no wonder she placed him near the top of her secret list. Number 3, Christopher Lambert, the mysterious European who unraveled her composure. Christopher Lambert wasn't loud, wasn't flashy, wasn't trying to command attention. And that's precisely what made him dangerous. When Diane worked with him on night moves, she found herself drawn to a kind of quiet magnetism that felt European. He had an air of mystery that suggested he was thinking 3 layers deeper than anyone else in the room. His subtle gestures, the thoughtful pauses, the soft-spoken humor, all of it worked like a spell. Diane remembers long nights rehearsing intricate emotional scenes, where dialogue wasn't nearly as important as the tension between the lines. Lambert had a way of listening that made every moment feel intimate, even when surrounded by cameras and crew. She described him as the kind of man who could make silence feel like a confession. And then there was the accent. Deep, textured, unmistakably French. Diane said it did half the work, because whenever Lambert spoke, she momentarily forgot what she was supposed to say next. Their chemistry wasn't explosive like hers with Tom Cruise. It wasn't nostalgic like Matt Dillon. It was mature, charged, elegant. Lambert had a poet's soul hidden behind a warrior's jawline. His eyes revealed nothing and everything at once. Diane often felt like he was studying her, not as an actress, but as a woman. And that made their scenes simmer with an undercurrent Hollywood cameras rarely capture. She confessed that Lambert represented a type of temptation she wasn't prepared for. A man who could pull her into deeper waters without raising his voice or lifting a finger. Years later, the memory of him still makes her smile with a kind of wistful ache. Number 4, Kevin Costner. The quiet strength that made her feel seen. Where Lambert was enigmatic, Kevin Costner was grounding. Diane Lane's connection with Costner on the set of Let Him Go wasn't based on youthful infatuation or fiery chemistry. It was based on presence, safety, and an unexpected gentleness that caught her off guard. Kevin embodied the kind of masculinity that didn't need to shout. He walked onto a set like a man who knew exactly who he was and had nothing to prove. Diane said, "Kevin could make a whole room quiet just by folding his arms." That's the level of command he carried. But it wasn't intimidating. It was reassuring. When Kevin listened, he gave space. When he acted, he didn't perform at Diane. He performed with her. Their emotional scenes were layered, honest, and raw in a way that made Diane feel protected even when the script demanded vulnerability. She remembers one moment during rehearsal when Kevin simply looked at her. Steady, warm, unhurried. Something in that gaze hit her deeper than she expected. Not romantic, not flirtatious, something older than that. Something like understanding. She realized then that a man didn't need youth or flash to be irresistible. Sometimes he just needed authenticity. Kevin Costner didn't make Diane forget her lines. He made her forget the noise of Hollywood. And that, in its own way, was far more dangerous. Number 5. Josh Brolin. The electrifying wild card. She couldn't predict if Diane Lane had a list of men who rattled her composure. Josh Brolin would sit right in the center of it like a storm cloud charged with electricity. when they worked together on Jonah Hex. Josh brought an unpredictable intensity to every scene. He wasn't the type to stick to a pattern. One moment he was somber and brooding. The next moment cracking jokes with that rugged charm that felt both dangerous and disarming. Diane said acting with Josh was like dancing with a storm. Thrilling, chaotic, and impossible to fully prepare for. His eyes carried a mix of danger and tenderness, a combination that made every interaction feel alive. When he shifted tone or leaned in unexpectedly, the entire energy of the scene changed. Diane often found herself leaning into that unpredictability, feeling her heartbeat sync with the rhythm of his choices. What struck her most wasn't his rugged style or masculine swagger. It was the vulnerability he tucked beneath it all. Josh could go from thunder to quiet in a breath, and that duality pulled her in more than she liked to admit. There were moments on set, tiny flickers, where she felt the line between performance and reality blur. Nothing happened, but it didn't need to. The tension alone was enough to stay with her for years. Number 6, Richard Gere. The elegant danger. She never escaped. Richard Gere wasn't just the last name on Diane Lane's list. He was the one who stayed with her the longest. He was the danger wrapped in elegance, the man whose calm presence hid a magnetic pull strong enough to unsteady even the most disciplined professional. Diane first worked with Richard on Unfaithful, a film built on temptation, desire, betrayal, and emotional combustion. And the chemistry between them was so potent that even the crew whispered about it. Richard had a presence that felt studied yet effortless. His voice was smooth, his movements measured, his confidence quiet but unshakable. Diane recalled that when Richard looked at her, it wasn't a glance, it was a reading. She once said, "With Richard, you don't feel watched, you feel seen." That distinction made all the difference. It penetrated deeper. The danger with Richard wasn't youthful heat or unpredictable passion. It was the terrifying possibility of understanding, of being known too well, during scenes where they stood inches apart. Diane often felt her breath catch, not because of the script, but because Richard had a way of dissolving the space between acting and feeling. It was the closest she ever came to forgetting who she was professionally. By the time they reunited for nights in Rodantho, their chemistry was so natural it felt like simply picking up a story they never finished. Richard Gere was the temptation Diane never acted on, the almost lover she only experienced through characters. And sometimes, she admitted, that's the kind of desire that lingers the longest. At 60, Diane Lane isn't chasing headlines or stirring scandal. She's simply telling the truth she carried for decades. 6 men, 6 different kinds of temptation, each leaving a quiet fingerprint on her life. None of it turned into romance, but the emotions were real, raw, and unforgettable. Diane now speaks with the calm honesty of a woman who survived Hollywood with her heart intact. And as she leans back with that knowing smile, she leaves one final tease hanging in the air. There were 6 I dreamed about, but only one I almost loved.